Hi, this is Luis Navarro from Twin Tribes, and you're listening to the New Wave Music Podcast.
Welcome back to the New Wave Music Podcast. As always, this is Steve. I'm also joined by T-Bone. Now, we haven't done a new music spotlight in quite some time, and we're really excited to have Jonathan Hortzman from the band Urban Heat joining us today. Jonathan, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much for having me here. I didn't realize that you haven't done one in a while, and I get to kind of re-pop the cherry, so to speak.
Steve was the last one, Twin Tribes?
The last one we did was Twin Tribes earlier this year.
Yeah, so it's been a little while. Yeah.
What? That's an honor to be asked to follow them up. Thank you.
So, Jonathan, you are the lead singer and you play guitar. Can you tell us who else is in the band with you and their role?
Yeah. We got Paxel Foley. He plays bass as well as like bass synth, so like a Moog and the Novation Bass Station. And then we've got Kevin Knockan. He triggers the drum machines, plays synths, he plays guitar, does some backing vocals.
So, Jonathan, how did Urban Heat come together? How did you guys come together as a band?
We had been in similar. The Austin music scene at the time was, I mean, 10 years ago, like when I met them, the Austin music scene felt a lot smaller than it is now. It was a pretty close knit. And so you kind of would find yourself kind of running into the same musicians at your gigs because they were gigging like down the street or something like that. And you just kind of, all your circles just sort of overlapped. And we found there was a moment in time where all of us had left our projects. We were all free agents. And I put together some stuff that I wanted to do like a little solo performance for. But for me, solo, I never wanted it to just be me on stage. I've always liked the aesthetic and the energy of that kind of back and forth with other musicians on stage. And so I asked Kevin initially just like, hey, would you like just back me up on this thing? Just be out here and played the stuff for him. And he was like, I'll do you one better. I'll play with you. But you're not just going to do this on your own. Like if I do this with you, like we're going to do this as like, this is going to be a thing. And I was like, all right, like he believed in it enough to be like, I want to be a part of this. And then it was a matter of fleshing it out. We had a drummer for a little bit, but he was busier with another project. And then we approached Pax. Kevin was like, Pax would be perfect for this. And I'd always wanted to do something with him. Pax was actually, when he left his previous band, he was at the point of like, I'm not doing this music thing anymore, and we kind of had to like kind of claw him out of retirement. Like he was not really interested initially. And it was like, well, just try it out. Let's just see, because there's only so many times you put all your eggs in a basket and you do the whole thing and you start getting jaded and life just kind of, I don't blame anybody for as we get older, just being like, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. But we were able to convince him. I think now he's happy that he did that.
Good.
For sure.
So another question I got to ask is, how did the band get its name, Urban Heat?
Yeah, so that's kind of a funny story. We there were names that we were throwing around, and Kevin had this name, Urban Heat Island Effect, which was it's the global warming phenomenon where urban centers and cities are like 10 degrees hotter than the countryside and rural areas because of lack of trees and concrete basically just soaking up heat. And I just thought it was really cool, a really cool juxtaposition of words. I also thought it was kind of a cool thing and like a very like sort of what time period, what generation do we get to like name our bands after global warming phenomenons? Like it felt like very like of the moment.
Yeah.
I took for granted that it's not a very common phrase. And so the order of words might get mixed up. And so that was happening on marquees and on bills. They were saying like urban island heat effect or sometimes they just drop, one of the words and so we just shortened it to Urban Heat, which was kind of interesting, kind of double entendre sort of thing. We have, we're mostly the band's mostly people of color and black men, and like urban can be like a stand-in when you're talking about black populations. So it's kind of, it sort of taking on its own meaning. The name, to be honest, it's not my favorite thing about the band, but your hope when you're creating something and you're naming it is that the work that you're creating will eclipse the name, just the meaning of the words by themselves. These two words on paper, you give them meaning. So at this point, I kind of love the name just because for me, the name means, the whole crazy story of the last 4 years and what's been going on.
Well, and beyond the meaning, I think it just, I kind of, as you hinted there, it just sort of sounds good. It's concise. It's nothing too fancy. And I think, so many bands out there have just those kind of short, generally short names that just pop out. And I think that works well for this one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. As we've been playing and meeting more bands, we're realizing so many bands in our genre are named after song lyrics from, you know what I mean? And I'm like, damn, if only we had known that people would have pegged us as a goth band later, then we would have known, because we had no idea when we were starting this out, like what people, you know what I mean? Like who was going to gravitate towards it and where we were going to be placed.
Right.
It wasn't intentional to sort of where we landed,
So who are some of the band's biggest musical influences and how have they shaped Urban Heat's sound?
It's kind of a mixture, right? Because we have sonically, I started writing this stuff because I was getting into analog synths, and there would just be, trying to learn subtractive synthesis, and then there would be a sound that I would just love, and it needed drums with it. Started looking at like old Linn drum samples, and that sound just works so well with an analog synth, especially like where the pads are like for bass and low end. I wasn't allowed to listen to a lot of music growing up. And so I don't know where exactly the first time that I heard, a Linn drum and a arpeggiated bass line working together and how it wormed its way into my head. But at some point that happened. The stuff that I write melodically, I think feeling wise, energetically, there's like for me, I start from like a Nine Inch Nails sort of place. But then it takes on its own sort of thing. And then the guys, everything that I write kind of has to pass the cool test. So Kevin and Pax are the ones who actually have a really deep music vocabulary and kind of grew up on cool shit. And so I have to anything that I write has to pass muster. Like it's got to get them to tap their heads, and then they'll let me know, oh yeah, this sounds like yada yada, or like it's kind of got this vibe but like meets this vibe. Kevin, both of them have a deep like appreciation for hip hop, and so it's interesting because I think hip hop and like a Wu-Tang sort of like approach to this band probably it can be thanked more than like Depeche Mode's influence. But I know that like the future stuff that we're working on, we're trying to look at it from like, what if like Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails made a record that like Sonic Youth came into the room at the end and started fucking with it, trying to look at it. Trying to look at it from like a strange, weird sort of like, okay, what if? It's difficult because you want to just sort of throw things at the wall or like figure out how to like really hear your inner voice or like the music that's out there and give it life. But at the same time, you're doing it within a framework that like you have to be able to reference things for people in order to talk about it. We have to have a shared vocabulary while trying to make something brand new. So it's an interesting, not to say that I hate that question, but that question is always a difficult one for me,
It is. It can be.
Well, for our listeners who might not yet be familiar with Urban Heat, your music blends various genres like new wave, post-punk, dark wave, and goth. How do you manage to seamlessly integrate these different styles?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to, I think it integrates because it's like kind of unintentional, with the exception of like how we're trying to approach the new stuff, that the Nine Inch Nails Run the Jewels thing. For the rest of it, it's very I don't know, we listen to so much, right? Like nobody listens to just only one genre of music. Like there's probably songs that you really connect with that are all over the place. And so little bits and pieces of those kind of worm their way into the stuff that you create. Thank you for saying that we blend it seamlessly. That's quite a compliment. I don't know how we do that. That feels, I don't know. There's a chef you can look at a recipe. Two different chefs can look at the exact same recipe, right? And somebody with more experience or somebody who's just like tuned into it their food's just gonna work better. And I don't know what that is. Maybe it's just time, it's practice, but yeah, somehow what we're doing is working. And again, thank you for saying that and asking that.
Yeah. It seems like oftentimes the band is labeled as dark wave, and Steve, as Steve just mentioned, your music simply defies categorization. How important is it for you not to be stuck with one label?
Okay, so like remember Deftones? They got thrown into this like nu metal thing, even though I felt like Korn, Limp Bizkit, Slipknot, that nu metal made sense to call them that, right? You couldn't really describe what Deftones were doing. And so, but nu metal was the thing happening at the time, and they got thrown into this nu metal thing. But for me, at least, I think the legacy of the Deftones and later in life, like later in the story of music, when we look back at what Deftones did versus the rest of the bands that are considered nu metal, I think by defying genre, I think that's how you like create like real legacy. That's how you create something that inspires something greater than like just your career. So for me, yeah, I think it's really important to try and forge your own path. Although like that's frightening and strange, and then you run the risk of sounding like such a tool, but you just have to be like really honest. Like I want to do something that's not derivative, that isn't, that's like very well thought out, but also super raw, and just want us to write the music that's in our heads.
So we saw you on tour earlier this year with Twin Tribes. T-Bone and myself were blown away and instantly became fans of the band. I picked up the album Wellness on your Bandcamp site, I believe. Since then, songs like Trust,
there's just no future left for us. There is just no future left for us. There is just no future left for us.
Have you ever
thought you found your place till you miss a moment and you've been replaced? Or have you ever found some peace of mind just to have it taken for another time? I said, I've had enough to turn it around again. I've had enough to take it all back.
And that gun in your hand.
You wanna find your place, you wanna make your mark. With that gun in your hand, you wanna shine a light in the dark. With that gun in your hand, shine away from your love.
Have been on heavy rotation. What songs from that compilation are maybe some of your personal favorites, or ones that you could recommend to our listeners to get introduced to the band?
I mean, Trust is awesome. I really like Trust. That was something that we needed to do because I felt like a lot of the songs where I was like, we need some more guitar. We're going this really dark wave thing, and I really wanted to try something like more post-punk. Of course, you can't get away from synths yeah. Trust is cool. What's a good introduction to the band? That's a great question. Something on that record. I need to I should have pulled up a track listing. I'm like, what's on that record? Which is essentially everything that we're playing out except the new singles, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on there.
There's a couple that we don't play live that I really I like Going Down.
Well, they say that we run aground. It's all pouring in and they can't seem to get it down. We're all going down, 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 down. Together we go down.
It's not like a really popular one. Reason Why is sweet.
Down the old halls they wander with thoughts worldwide. They've come to remind you that you're not alright. But if you decide that it's not your time, gonna try your eyes, gonna find your reason why.
I like the vibe of Reason Why. That Gun in Your Hand, that's one of the first songs that we like wrote. I think that we still oscillate around that vibe. I think That Gun in Your Hand is sort of like our North Star, and everything else is kind of like compared to that in some way, or not compared to, but exists in relation to that in some way. So I think That Gun in Your Hand is kind of like it's not like our most popular song, but like there's elements to it. Like it has like the hip hop breakdown, like with some trap hats. It has like the big heavy like Moog bass, sort of like repetitive. The hook is actually more about the synth line. There's just kind of like that gun in your hand, and then the synth does its thing, and it's more about the synths, which I think, and those are elements that kind of carry on through the rest of our music. I think vibe wise and structure wise, That Gun in Your Hand is probably like, that's Urban Heat, and it talks about real shit. So that's a big thing with our stuff too. Is like, I want our songs not to just be like fluff. I want them to mean something.
So when we saw you guys live, I immediately fell in love with A Simple Love Song.
And on my way, I picked a flower. I wanted to give it to you, but before I could get there, it burst into flames. I wish I could write you a simple love song, but the world keeps falling apart. I wish I could write you a simple love song, but the world keeps falling apart.
And let me tell you, the video for that is amazing. Also, everybody should check it out. I get a Talking Heads kind of vibe from that video. Am I correct on that?
Yes, absolutely. Also, the story, that video is funny because we had to shoot something, and like I've like shot and directed like and edited most of our videos. I painted a wall in my house green so we could use it as a green screen, and literally just the cropping of the shots was dictated by making sure the bookshelf wasn't in on the side. You know what I mean? Like that was just like against the wall in my old house, and we just took turns. There's no shots that are actually all three of us, because we just took turns with one of us shooting and the other one out front, and then just like throwing out ideas and being goofy. And
that's what makes it so much fun.
Yeah, we've kind of like did that again with like Sanitizer, just doing something that was just like, I think it's really important for us, at least in this genre where everything's like very dark and it's like heavy subject matter and stuff. I think it's really cool when bands can show like that we don't take ourselves too seriously. Yeah. I think it's really important, at least. So that was a really fun one.
Pax just looks like he's having the time of his life playing around with the synths on that one.
Dude, Pax is still, for me, he is such a hard read. When he's smiling and having a good time and you can feel like you're a part of that, nothing feels better than like me and Pax are laughing right now. Like that's freaking cool. You know what I mean? Like he makes you feel like, okay, I'm doing something right. He's having a good time.
So also on your Bandcamp site, I noticed you had a single of a piano version of Have You Ever?
Have you ever found your sense of self till you realize you're being someone else? Or have you ever thought it seemed the end just to realize it's got on again? I said I've had enough to turn it around again.
Which to me was a haunting and very different stripped down version of the song. Can you tell me what led to releasing that single or that version of it?
Yeah, we were in we had already released Wellness, and we knew that we needed to take time for the next record. It wasn't done. It also we were looking at labels. We didn't want to rush the next record, but I wanted to put something out. I didn't want to just wait a year before having new music out. I had imagined this version of Have You Ever. I think we had to do it. We were in Milwaukee and this radio station asked if we wanted to do like a stripped down version, like performance. And I was like, well, we're a synth band. Like we don't really do stripped down. I was like, well, the way it came about initially was I was in LA doing vocals for The Tower for the new record. Ben Greenspan, who produced it, he had this little piano in the room that had this is not important, but had like rubber. So pianos make sound by, this like felt hammer hitting a string. And he had rubber over the felt before it hit the string. So like the piano had this like really muted nylon sort of sound. It was really gorgeous, but I was just dicking around playing Have You Ever on it. And I took a little video of it for myself on my phone and was just like, I really like this version of this song. And so we ended up doing it in Milwaukee. We rehearsed it like once right before we ended up taping it in front of a live audience, which is always a stressful thing, but that's kind of like, unfortunately, that's the way that my brain operates. I'm just like, let's just go, like it'll work. So we needed a video for it. We needed a video, we needed a recording. We were on tour, which I'm realizing a lot of our stories are like, we were on tour and then, because like that's like half of our life. We were in Vegas actually, and we had a couple of days. We were there to rehearse a bit because we had a couple of days off on tour and we were like, let's just stay in Vegas. We were going to shoot the video for the Goodbye Horses cover. And we were also going to shoot a video for the Have You Ever acoustic version. I scheduled that Have You Ever acoustic version before I had recorded the song and found ourselves in Vegas like 2 days before the shoot was supposed to happen. And I didn't have an actual recording to shoot to because you kind of you don't actually perform it during a music video. You shoot it, but you've got the song playing in the background and then you sync it later. So I went in my hotel room in Vegas, recorded. So I used digital piano for the piano sounds, which we re-recorded later in LA at that same studio with that piano that I had initially played it on. I went into the bathroom and basically, so like the vocal sound, the echo, the reverb that you're hearing on that recording is just me sitting on the toilet in a bathroom in a hotel in Vegas, thinking about, losing love. And I was personally going through a really hard time right then too. And so I just kind of, it was just not glamorous. It was depressing. It was kind of perfect. It was perfect.
I am so glad you just mentioned Goodbye Horses. Yeah, because, oh man, your version of that we saw live was just phenomenal. So
Thank
good.
you.
So good.
Thank you.
Now, the track Like This was released as a single in 2023.
I can feel the catalyst, the bad again. Oh my God, I know I feel depressed again. I can feel it in my bones when it starts to come around. It comes around like this.
Was there a reason that it wasn't included on the upcoming album, The Tower?
Yeah. I knew somebody was going to ask this. I was like, someone's gonna pick up on that because this was supposed to be the first single off The Tower. There's two reasons. First is that I always viewed Like This as sort of a bridge between Wellness and The Tower. I thought it was a good introduction to The Tower, but not necessarily. We kind of decided it isn't necessarily The Tower. When listening to all the tracks, if there's one that sort of stands out sonically, kind of different from the others, it was Like This. As far as The Tower as a full listening experience. But the real reason that it ended up coming off, and this is not that, well, maybe it's interesting. When we sent it off for vinyl mastering as an 11 song record. our mastering guy, Justin, was like, well, because you try to get both sides of the LP to be around the same length. And there's kind of a perfect amount of time that they should be in order for like the best quality of sound, the highest fidelity of sound. You can make it work with more, but you're going to slowly, as you add more information, you start slowly degrading the sound. So basically, we needed it to be a 5 songs on one side, 5 songs on the other. We could have included like this, but it would have made the quality of the vinyl audio would have suffered from it. Maybe not noticeably, but yeah, a decision had to be made. It was like, hey, if you cut one song, this will be perfect. And so I told the guys, hey, if we cut one song, which song should we, and they were both like this. And honestly, I wanted to cut a different one that I'm really pensive about releasing. I'm just like so scared of what people are going to think of it. But they liked that one and wanted to keep it on, which felt good. Makes me a little less scared. I was like, well, if the cool guys like it, then maybe it's all right.
Well, speaking of the new album, The Tower, it comes out August 16th, and you've already released several singles such as Sanitizer.
You're sharpening your scalpel, like sharpening your wit. The world is gonna kill you, but you're never gonna quit. You open up my chest like there's nothing wrong with it, but your operating table needs a sanitizer hit. You're sharpening your scalpel, like sharpening your wit. The world is gonna kill you, but you're never gonna quit.
Right Time of Night.
Caught a scent of the living. All the people that pray, carrying their pitchforks and burning up in the flames. 'Cause it's the right time of night. Right time of night.
Say the Words.
Say the words, and I would want for nothing. Just say the words, and I'll be sad wonders. I'll be sad wonders.
And a song that I'm already calling Song of the Year, 7 Safe Places.
We could tell ourselves they had it coming. We could just own our mistakes. In one of 7 safe places to hide. In one of 7 safe places.
What can you tell us about the new album?
The new album is like it's like a spider web, with each of the attachment points going out, and sort of like there's different genres and different ideas and different vibes, and each attachment point is going out and sort of like connected to each of these genres, and then there's that secondary sort of like circular thread around the whole thing to connect those attachment points and make something that is, not just spread out and to give it form. It is deeply personal in a way that I don't know that I want to do again. It's the first sort of like complete sonic and emotional like statement from the band, but also from myself as an artist. In my whole life, I haven't completed a full record in this way. It was written in 2 weeks right after we'd gotten off of a tour.
Wow.
I had 30 or 40 demos that I thought were going to, we just pick out of them, and I ended up tossing all of those when I wrote one song that was like, oh no, this is what we're going for. And then the rest of the songs sort of came just immediately right after that. I brought it to the guys with the idea that we were going to then sort of like, go through the cool test, change things, whatever. I brought it to them and they're like, oh no, this is a record. Like we're not going to touch this. So which also makes me super nervous about how people are going to, you know what I mean? Because I can't blame it on anybody else. There's not a single element on that record where like if somebody doesn't like it, I can be like, well, that was somebody else's decision. Like, no, like this is completely on me.
Yeah, I got to agree with Steve. 7 Safe Places. Wow, what a song!
Thank you so much. I'm actually working. It was initially, there was a story for it that I wanted to make a graphic novel out of. And we kind of, the cost of that and the time wasn't going to work. So I'm actually working on a 7-part, I guess, like sci-fi novel. Where, I'm just
you got your hands in everything, don't you?
I do. Well, it helps to not get burnt out on the music part of it, you know? There's different aspects that I can work out and work on.
So how do you collaborate as a band when creating new music or in the new album? Do each of you have specific roles, or was this pretty much all you're doing and you brought in the guys to kind of fine tune it?
Yeah, the latter for this one for sure. We'll go in the studio and I tend to record most of the parts and we just kind of more talk about ideas and vibes and feeling. They'll maybe like want me to sing something differently and, you know, we'll try different things. In the future, we're going to, I think part of the purpose of this was to really, really just kind of let me have one so that we could, in the future, really, truly work more collaboratively. Yeah, for this, the process was very, very much just kind of the cool test with them.
So along with the new album being released August 16th, Urban Heat is also doing a large tour. The tour kicks off on July 6th in Dallas, Texas, and it goes through October 13th in San Antonio, Texas. We are really looking forward to seeing you August 7th in Salt Lake City. What can audiences expect on this tour?
Insanity.
Good.
Absolute insanity. I mean, we finished out 2 months with Twin Tribes, and that feeling in those crowds, I mean, I love a support run. You get, 40 minutes, just like, don't pace yourself, just go all in every night. You get to play for new crowds and, feel really great with surprising people, because a lot of people there are not going to know who you are and they get surprised. And that's awesome. And you feel all this growth, but a headline run, especially with the momentum that the band has right now, and a new record about to come out, and then the Molchat Doma thing happening after that. It's just the energy feels, I mean, a headline run like that, headline run already is like a party for like you and your fan base, you know what I mean? And like the community that's formed around the music. And so these are going to be ragers, like, nice. I might die. This tour is going to be, we added somebody to our crew. We have like a merch sound, like roadie guy, Vinny. And so like, it's going to take a little bit. We normally travel as a 3-piece. So we're traveling with like a little bit more help, which is going to be really cool and take some of the stress off of us. And then we have like new material to be working out. That'll be interesting because the songs kind of really take their own life after they've been played out like a month. Before you play them in front of crowds, like they're one thing, but then the audience is like that silent band member that their feedback and their energy kind of create a different thing. And so it's going to be really cool for, the people who see this tour are really going to be helping shape what the tower kind of looks like live from here on out, which is really cool.
So Jonathan, what's been your most memorable live performance to date?
That's a tough question because that's like picking a favorite child, like every show, with the exception of the ones that are just like stressful and just like this bad sound or something. Some shows, 1 out of like 20, you might find that's a little bit of a struggle. And of course you get there, but you got to work a little bit for it. Most shows are just, they're religious experiences. I'm just so happy and grateful to be doing them. Anytime we play New York, it's something really special. When we play Southern California, anywhere like, there isn't like a huge scene for this in Austin, Texas specifically. So anytime we get out to a region of the country where there is a big scene for it and we see those people, that excitement, It's very, very special. I'll say the show that stands out the most, though, for me personally, was our very first tour in 2022. And isn't that crazy? We started touring in 2022. That was our first tour. We had gotten through, we split our tour into two. We were doing the East Coast first, and then we were going to hit the West Coast. And East Coast started with Chicago, and it was so special because like people showed out. People were singing along a bit, and it was like a good crowd. And that was our first time playing out of state, and it was like, okay, all right, like this is a thing. But then it kind of spoiled us because the rest of the tour, like then it was kind of up and down. You'd have a good one, then you'd have a bad one, then you'd have, you'd have a show with like 2 people show up, and then you'd follow that up with 100. And so we didn't really know what to expect when we went to the West Coast. We were just pensively just sort of like, there's gonna be a good one, there's gonna be bad ones, just like have no expectations. Long Beach was killer, San Francisco was killer, like that's very good, very, very cool. But then we get to Seattle, and I couldn't hear myself sing because of the volume of people singing my lyrics back at me.
Wow.
It was, and so now I use in-ear monitors. That was the show that I was like, oh, now I need in-ears because I can't. It was really, really special. And you have different moments in your career where you're like, oh, this is working, and that's definitely one of them. Like obviously, like Darker Waves, Cruel World, yes, these performances, playing festivals with these legacy acts that yes, those are super special and super memorable. But it's this band was made for mid-size clubs at midnight, with the fog going, and that's what this is for. And I love a festival stage. I love an open air thing and playing for all those people. But give me a fog machine where I can't breathe, and and strobes that are going to give me epileptic seizures. Like that's what I want.
I just saw you guys are heading to Europe at the end in the fall. You're doing a fundraiser right now to raise funds for that. You want to give a plug out for that?
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to do that. That's something so I put the fundraiser briefly on our stories yesterday, and then I sent out to our mailing list. I sent out information about it. I haven't done like a proper like Instagram post sort of thing about it because I feel weird. I feel weird. You know what I mean? Like we were like, hey, come buy these shirts, and like, yeah, like here, come buy these records. Like, and then it's like, oh, and also we still need money. So can you just give it to us? And like, because like the taxes are like, you know what I mean? Like it's just, we can keep more of it if it's just a donation. So like, but yeah, basically we found out that, Molchat, we met them at Darker Waves, and they hit us up a couple months later asking if we wanted to go to Europe. And it was just like an absolute, like, yes, we will, and he actually asked me, their bass player, like actually asked, like, is this feasible for you? And I was like, yeah. Like I was just in my head, I was like, yeah, in my head, I was like, okay, like we're going to make this work. But obviously like, yes, like there's no world where I don't do that, right? Where I do not say yes. So I knew that we were going to have to do a fundraiser for it. I knew that was the only way that we could, just the upfront costs between our tickets, yes, but also the merch that we have to get printed in Europe, renting a van, and then a driver and merch person. So just the cost of getting there are going to, yeah. People had suggested doing fundraisers when our van was totaled, or for our first tour, or for the first record, or things like that, and I've always felt like bands have one good fundraiser in them, like one really solid one. And I wanted to wait. I put it out to the universe because I was like, I want to wait for something like a European tour. That was actually what I would say. And then lo and behold, this is that moment. So I wanted to do something where I have like an Indiegogo where we have, tiers and rewards and things like that. But we ended up going with Give Butter as the site that's hosting it, because their fees are just, they don't take any fees. More money that is donated actually goes to the cause. We're trying to raise $15,000, and we have 4 months to do it. I think it's totally doable. I think a lot of this is also, we're gonna on tour at the merch table. I'll have a little QR code. It's just to help offset those costs. We will be able to make money on this next tour for sure, but even then, we have to get buy merch and things before the margins for this are wild. And I keep reading articles that are like, touring is too expensive, yada, yada. And I'm like, no, it's not. We can do it. And then like when we actually like get into the nuts and bolts of it, I'm like, dang, touring is expensive.
It could be tight.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, we're not, at this point, we're not doing this for money. Like we're trying to build something that matters and is sustainable, but it is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think some of the wording in the description of the fundraiser, I talk about like it's important to give this community like the opportunity to kind of become a real part of this. And our fan base they're crazy, and I mean that in the best way. I mean that with the most love. Like our fans I love our fans, and they're just as out of their minds as I am, and we connect on that. And I think that we'll do just fine with it. But that was probably a poor plug. You can donate to our fundraiser if you go to our Instagram. It's at the links there, and yes, your money will go to a great cause.
And now I think we have what I thought was the best question that we have. Steve, go for it.
Oh no.
Jonathan, your website features some incredibly creative merchandise. I've never seen a band sell fragrances inspired by their singles before. Can you tell us how that idea came about?
Yeah. Like most stories, this one begins with we were on tour and I had a day off in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was looking at this oddity shop and like a curiosity shop. And next door, there was a perfumery. And because of how much I sweat on stage, I'm always very conscious of like, if I'm going to go talk to fans and stuff afterwards, I'll like change my shirt and like spray some cologne or something. So I would kind of, a lot of times talking to fans afterwards, I get comments on like, oh, you smell really good for like just getting off stage, so many comments like that. In fact, that when I stumbled into this perfumery, I was like, what if when people said, you smell so good, I could be like, yes, and you can buy it right there. It just seemed like it made so much sense. No pun intended. And so I went, basically I talked to the women there. I was like, hey, so how do you go about doing your thing? They were doing custom scents just like for individuals. And I was like, well, no. Like I want to make a lot of perfume. They're like, well, you have to get like your wholesaler's license and like yada, yada. So I went through that process to be able to buy wholesale like fragrance ingredients. And then spent 3 months. I hyperfixate on things. So I just got really into scents and trying out different fragrances and perfumes. And it came to my wife at the time had some friends over for a friend's birthday or something. And so there were a bunch of beautiful women in the living room. And I had a couple of different fragrance ideas. And so basically, we just did a smelling test and I was like, cool, if y'all like this one, this is the one. And I haven't been able to do that sort of market research on some of the other ones. So some of the later ones have been like hit or miss because it's like, I'm the only one smelling it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I like this one. And they're good, but they're for a specific person. But if I could get a gaggle of beautiful women again to smell my fragrances, that'd be very helpful.
Well, now you mentioned a moment ago, you mentioned Instagram. What are the best ways for our listeners to keep up with Urban Heat?
Yeah, we post pretty regularly on our Instagram with updates. There is a TikTok, but I'm not that good with it all the time. UrbanHeatBand.com has our tour dates. And then at the bottom of that, you can sign up for our newsletter. And I put those out. I'm going to start putting them out every couple of weeks, especially with everything that's ramping up. So yeah, I think IG and the newsletter are probably the best ways to see what's going on with us. And like, most importantly, just adding it to a playlist on whatever your place of listening to music is, and keeping us in mind and keeping us in your rotation,
Jonathan, again, we want to thank you so much for being with us today. If you'll please say hello to your bandmates from us, and we wish you guys the best of luck with the new album and the tour.
Thank you so much. I cannot wait to see. So we'll see you in Salt Lake?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're
Awesome.
excited about it.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Thanks again, Jonathan, and best of luck to everything with you.
Thank you so much. Good luck to y'all as well.
All right. We want to thank Jonathan Hortzman for that fantastic interview. Definitely check out their new album coming out in August. And on our next episode, we are thrilled to have a very special guest. I'd keep it a secret, but I'm not going to. It's Tom Bailey from the Thompson Twins. You're going to enjoy this one.
If this is your first time listening, we thank you and ask that you please subscribe. That's a great way to support us. And if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search for New Wave Music Podcast. We'll catch you on the next episode.